Hey guys, so today in class we talked about the four-square method for adding and subtracting fractions. So I wanted to quickly kind of go over the expectations for the four-square method and how it works and give you a little bit more background on it if you weren't here today. So in class we talked about creating our boxes here. Notice I always have four boxes. I just create a T right through the center. In the first box, this is where I'm going to write out the problem. And as we begin, the problem's already going to be written out for you. But as we move on, you guys will write your problem here. Then we move over to the second box where we need to find our least common denominator. And when we find our least common denominator, all we're doing is we're listing the multiples of the denominators. For example, in this problem here, my denominator is 4 and my other one is 3. So I'm going to list the multiples for those numbers. In my class, I always have students write out the first 5 multiples of those numbers. Obviously, for some numbers you may need to write out more, and for others you may not need all 5. But to start everybody off, I have kids write out the first 5 multiples of each of those numbers. Once we have found the least common multiple, so the smallest number that they both have in common, then I can tell what my LCD is, because my least common denominator, which is LCD, is going to be the same thing as the least common multiple. So make sure that you are aware what those 3 letters mean. In the third box, that's where we're going to rewrite the fractions. Anytime that we add or subtract fractions, they must have the same denominator. So I have to make sure that I rewrite my fractions to have the least common denominator. Then, lastly, in step 4, we're going to solve and simplify if we need to. Not all fractions are going to need to be simplified. As we've talked about in my classroom this week, if a numerator is a prime number or if a denominator is a prime number, then chances are it's not going to be simplified because the only factors of that prime number are 1 and itself. So keep that in mind as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of how this works using this problem here. If I have 1/4 plus 1/3, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to list out the multiples for 4 and 3. So my first 5 multiples for 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. My first 5 multiples for 3 are going to be 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. So now I've got to look and see what they have in common. Well, as I look, I notice that they have 12 in common, and that's the only number that they have that they have in common. So my LCD here is going to be the number 12. When I go to rewrite my fraction now, I can go ahead and write that the denominator there is going to be 12 at the end because that's the one that they have in common. So I'm going to go ahead and write those down there. And now I've got to do some multiplication in order to get that denominator as 12 in order to find that equivalent fraction. So 4 times something gives me 12. Well, in this case, 4 times 3 gives me 12. What I multiply by down here, I also have to multiply up here. Notice that here I create the fraction 3/3, and we should know that this fraction is equivalent to 1 whole. The fraction that we create here must be equivalent to 1. I can't multiply by 3 here and multiply 2 up here because I feel like it. It just doesn't work that way. So I multiply by 3, I multiply by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So 3/12 is my equivalent fraction to 1/4. Down here, I've got 3 times something equals 12. Well, I know that 3 times 4 equals 12. So again, what I do here, I also have to do right here. 4 times 1 equals 4. Now, I always like to rewrite over here in an addition setting. And whenever I add 2 fractions like this, I'm going to write them going straight across. So I'm going to write 3/12 plus 4/12. And anytime we add 2 fractions, I do not add the denominators. Don't add the denominators. I keep those the same, so I can go ahead right here and write 12. but I do have to add the numerators. So 3 plus 4, which is 7. I have an answer of 7/12, and I have to think to myself, can this be simplified? Well, if I think about the factors of 7, I have 1 and 7, and the factors of 12 are 1, 2, 6, and 12. They don't have anything in common. 7 is a prime number, so therefore this cannot be simplified. If you have questions with some of the work that involves adding fractions, please let me know. That way I can help you with those even though you are not in class.